She sold herself to save her child, the human who gave her a brighter life. The palace of Veloria stretched like a jewel in the heart of the galaxy. Its spires reflected the light of three suns, casting a spectrum of colors over polished marble floors. The corridors were lined with crystal panels that shimmered with the images of Veloria's history, great battles, treaties, and celebrations of the royal family. Nobles walked through the halls with careful poise, their gowns and uniforms embroidered with intricate symbols, each one signaling wealth, status, and influence. In this world of power and politics, every glance, every word, and every movement carried meaning. Yet among the throngs of people who moved with confidence and purpose, one figure often went unnoticed. Princess Lyra moved quietly through the palace halls. Her steps were soft, almost silent against the cold marble. She held her hands in front of her, fingers intertwined, and kept her gaze low as if the floor itself held secrets meant only for her. Lyra was young, but her violet eyes carried the depth of someone much older. She had studied all her life to understand diplomacy, history, and the delicate art of governance, yet she often felt invisible. Even her tutors, who spent hours correcting her posture and her speech, rarely looked past her shyness to see the clever mind beneath. The palace staff had long grown used to her presence. They called her polite and obedient, a quiet child who did not draw attention to herself. But in reality, Lyra spent many hours observing the world from the shadows. She noticed the way nobles whispered behind each other's backs, the subtle shifts of loyalty, and the unspoken rules that governed every interaction. She learned to read emotions in the tilt of a head, the twitch of an ear, or the way someone's eyes flickered when they spoke. In many ways, she understood people better than they understood themselves. Still, this knowledge rarely translated into influence. Today, the palace was alive with excitement. Delegates from neighboring star systems had arrived for a grand ceremony, and the main hall had been decorated with banners and holographic displays that shimmered with messages of peace and unity. Lyra sat in a quiet corner, away from the center of activity. She had chosen a seat where she could observe without being observed, where she could see the noble guests arrive and listen to the discussions without the pressure to participate. Around her, the air hummed with conversations, laughter, and the clinking of ceremonial utensils. Everywhere she looked, people sought to impress, to gain favor, or to assert dominance. She wondered, not for the first time, if she would ever belong in this world. Despite her quiet nature, Lyra had a natural curiosity that drew her toward others, even if only from a distance. She watched a group of young nobles discussing their education and plans for the future. One young prince boasted of his military training, while a noblewoman from another system spoke about her research into planetary ecosystems. Lyra noted the confidence in their voices, the way their eyes shone when they spoke about their achievements. She longed to speak freely, to share her own ideas, but the fear of rejection or ridicule held her back. Her voice had always felt too soft, too easily drowned out by the stronger voices around her. As the ceremony began, a hush fell over the hall. The High Chancellor spoke first, welcoming the delegates and recounting the history of Veloria's alliances. The crowd responded with polite applause, their expressions carefully composed to reflect the dignity of the occasion. Lyra listened attentively, her mind absorbing every word. She admired the Chancellor's skill in speaking with authority while remaining respectful to all parties. If she could one day speak with such clarity and presence, perhaps she could make a difference. It was at this moment that the human ambassador arrived. Captain Ethan Hale stepped into the hall with a quiet confidence that seemed to contrast sharply with the elaborate ceremony surrounding him. He was tall, with a strong, steady posture, and his uniform was simple but impeccably neat. There was an ease to his movements, a calm presence that seemed to draw attention without demanding it. As the delegates and nobles turned to greet him, Ethan's eyes scanned the room, taking in the activity without judgment or pretense. When his gaze fell on Lyra, she felt a sudden awareness that was almost physical. For the first time, someone in the bustling hall seemed to notice her, not as a princess to be flattered or manipulated, but as a person, standing quietly in a corner. His eyes met hers, steady and unassuming, and he gave her a small, welcoming smile. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had never experienced such direct attention from someone outside her immediate family or tutors. Most people overlooked her, assuming her shyness meant she had little to offer. but Ethan looked at her as if her presence mattered. Lyra tried to look away, lowering her gaze to the floor. She felt the weight of the room's attention, even though no one else seemed to notice. Some nobles had indeed begun to whisper, curious about why a human ambassador's eyes lingered on the shy princess. Others, too absorbed in their own status and alliances, continued their conversations, oblivious to the moment. Lyra's cheeks tinged with warmth, a mixture of embarrassment and a strange spark of hope. Ethan moved closer, not with the formality of a diplomat demanding recognition, but with the ease of someone approaching a friend. "Princess Lyra," he said softly, his voice carrying across the space without drawing unnecessary attention. "May I?" He extended his hand in a gesture of simple courtesy. Lyra froze, her mind raced. She had been taught the proper ways to greet dignitaries, but this was not a lesson nor a test. This was real, a moment that required a choice. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she lifted her hand and placed it in his. The touch was light, but it carried a sense of understanding and encouragement. It was a bridge between worlds, between fear and courage, between being unseen and being recognized. The reaction in the hall was subtle but noticeable. Whispers began to ripple through the nobles who were nearby. Some frowned, disapproving that a human ambassador would engage with the shy princess so directly. Others leaned in, curious about what this could mean. Yet the moment between Lyra and Ethan remained private, a quiet exchange that held more significance than the entire room realized. As the ceremony continued, Ethan spoke to Lyra with gentle questions, asking about her interests, her favorite subjects, and her thoughts on the galaxy beyond Veloria. Lyra answered softly at first, her voice barely above a whisper. But as he listened with genuine attention, she began to feel a confidence she had never known. She spoke about the books she loved, the histories of other worlds, and the ways she imagined Veloria could connect with distant civilizations in peaceful ways. Ethan nodded, occasionally asking questions that encouraged her to expand on her ideas. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt seen. Her shyness, which had always been a barrier, now seemed less like a limitation and more like a quiet strength. She realized that her observations, her careful thought, and her empathy for others gave her insight that many of the louder nobles lacked. This realization sparked a tiny flame of hope, a feeling that perhaps she could find her voice in a world that had long ignored her. The ceremony concluded and the guests began to disperse. Lyra stayed where she was, still holding on to the memory of the human's attention. Ethan approached her once more, offering a small bow of respect. "I hope we will have a chance to talk more," he said. Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She wanted to speak, to share everything she had observed and learned, but words still felt heavy on her tongue. Over the next few days, the palace was filled with preparations for diplomatic meetings, feasts, and formal events. Lyra moved through the halls with a new sense of purpose. She began noticing things she had never seen before: the way courtiers planned their movements, the subtleties in the expressions of visiting delegates, and the ways in which influence was quietly exchanged. With Ethan's encouragement lingering in her mind, she started to feel that perhaps she could navigate this complex world with her own skills and intelligence. One afternoon, as she wandered through a less crowded section of the palace gardens, she found herself thinking about the human ambassador. The sunlight fell softly through the transparent panels of the gardens, creating patterns of light on the floor. Lyra realized that she no longer felt like a shadow moving through her own home. She was beginning to step into the light, small step by small step, encouraged by someone who had recognized her value when others had overlooked her. It was a simple gesture, that human hand offered in friendship and respect, yet it had changed something profound inside her. Lyra understood, for the first time, that being noticed was not about grandeur or display, but about connection. A person could see her, truly see her, and that recognition gave her the courage to consider the possibilities ahead. As the suns of Veloria set, casting the palace in hues of orange and violet, Lyra stood at a balcony overlooking the city. She thought about the ceremonies, the nobles, the staff, and the visitors. She thought about the life she had led, quiet and unremarkable, and how one small interaction had begun to shift her perspective. Perhaps she could be more than a figure in the background. Perhaps she could make a difference. And for the first time, she felt a spark of anticipation for what the future might hold. The days following the grand ceremony passed in a blur of activity. The palace was a hive of diplomacy, bustling with delegates, advisors, and nobles, each moving with precise purpose. Princess Lyra had returned to her routine of observing from the edges, but the memory of the human ambassador, Captain Ethan Hale, lingered in her thoughts like a quiet melody. She found herself searching for small opportunities to encounter him again, not out of boldness, but from a curious desire to understand this human who had treated her with such simple kindness. Ethan, too, had noticed her. From the moment he had met the shy princess, he sensed something different about her. In a palace full of display, ambition, and veiled motives, Lyra moved like a calm current, unnoticed yet steady, watching the world and understanding it in ways most could not. Her eyes held questions and thoughts, an intelligence tempered by empathy, and he found himself drawn to it. He had come to Veloria to represent humanity in interstellar diplomacy. Yet in the quiet presence of Lyra, he realized there was much to learn about this alien world from someone who had so long been overlooked. One morning, as the palace prepared for a council meeting on trade agreements with a distant star system, Lyra found herself wandering the corridors earlier than usual. The halls were nearly empty, the silence only broken by the faint hum of energy conduits running through the walls. She paused at a window, watching the gardens below, their colors vivid under Veloria's three suns. The soft glow of the morning reflected in her violet eyes, and she felt a sense of calm she rarely experienced. "Princess Lyra," a voice said softly, interrupting her thoughts. She turned, startled, and saw Ethan standing there. He held a small data tablet in one hand and gave her a polite, easy smile. "May I walk with you?" he asked. There was no formality in his tone, no expectation, only a quiet respect that made her heart flutter nervously. She nodded. "Yes," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She was not used to being approached directly, much less by someone from another world. Yet with him it felt simple, natural, as if no one else existed in the palace at that moment. They walked together along the corridor, the palace doors sliding open to reveal the gardens. Ethan's gaze swept over the vibrant flowers, the crystalline fountains, and the elegant statues of Veloria's ancestors. "It's beautiful," he said. "I can see why this is considered a symbol of your planet's culture." Lyra nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "It is," she said softly. But most people only notice the grand structures, not the little details, the patterns in the flowers, the way the sunlight moves through the panels, or how the fountains reflect the sky. I like to notice the small things. Ethan's eyes lit up. "I noticed that about you the other day," he said gently. "You see things others overlook, and that is a rare gift. I think the world could learn a lot from seeing more like you do." Lyra's cheeks tinged with pink. Compliments were not unfamiliar, but there was sincerity in his words that made them feel different, meaningful. She felt a flicker of confidence rising within her, though she kept her voice measured. I try to observe," she admitted. "It helps me understand people and their choices, but often no one listens to what I notice." Ethan paused and looked at her. "That's because most people are too busy trying to be noticed themselves," he said. "They forget that sometimes the quietest voices have the most to teach." His words, simple as they were, resonated deeply with her. She realized that her shyness was not a flaw, it was a lens through which she could truly understand the world. They continued walking, discussing small details about Veloria's culture, the palace's history, and her personal observations about the daily life of the kingdom. Lyra found herself speaking more freely than she had ever done with anyone outside her family or tutors. Ethan listened intently, nodding, occasionally asking questions that encouraged her to elaborate. He never interrupted or judged, and that made her words flow naturally. She realized that being heard was not about volume or authority, it was about presence, attention, and respect. Over the next week, their encounters became more frequent. Ethan sought opportunities to speak with her, whether during garden walks, casual meetings in empty corridors, or brief moments before council discussions. Each time, Lyra felt her confidence grow, little by little. She began to recognize that her thoughts had value, that her ideas were not only valid but could influence decisions when expressed clearly. One afternoon, as they strolled through the palace observatory looking out at Veloria's moons and distant stars, Ethan asked, "Have you ever thought about how your world fits into the galaxy?" Lyra considered the question. "I have," she said slowly. "I've read about other planets, other cultures. We focus so much on our own politics and traditions that sometimes we forget how connected everything is. But I also think, maybe people like me who observe quietly can help build bridges, even if no one notices at first. Ethan smiled warmly. That's exactly what I think, he said. Sometimes it just takes one person to recognize that potential. Once that happens, everything can change. He paused. I hope I can help you see that potential in yourself. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and a newfound determination. She realized that she no longer wanted to remain in the background, unseen and unheard. She wanted to contribute to make a difference. And with Ethan's support, she felt capable of stepping into the world more fully. Their conversations were not limited to abstract ideas. Ethan asked practical questions, too. How Veloria managed its resources, how decisions were made, and what challenges the palace faced in daily governance. Lyra, drawing on her extensive study of diplomacy and her careful observations, provided thoughtful answers. She suggested improvements, small but significant, that could streamline communication and help the council make more informed decisions. Each time, Ethan praised her insight, reinforcing her growing confidence. Word of their collaboration began to circulate among the palace staff and a few influential nobles. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few openly disapproved. Why does a human spend so much time with the shy princess? They whispered. Does he not see that she has no influence, that she is insignificant? But Ethan paid no attention to the gossip. To him, Lyra's intelligence and empathy mattered far more than appearances or status. One evening, as the suns dipped low and the palace was bathed in golden light, Lyra found herself in the Grand Library. She had been researching past treaties and diplomatic correspondences, trying to understand the successes and failures of Veloria's history. Ethan entered quietly, carrying a few volumes of human records he thought might interest her. I thought these might help, he said, setting the books beside her. Humans have faced many challenges and found creative solutions. Perhaps you'll find some ideas useful for your own plans. Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. You think I can make plans? She asked softly. The question was not about doubt in her abilities, but surprise that someone else believed in her potential so completely. I don't just think it, Ethan replied. I know it. You have the insight, the patience, and the understanding to make a difference. All you need is a chance and perhaps a little courage. Lyra felt a surge of determination. She had long admired the bravery of others from a distance, but she had never imagined that she could embody it herself. With Ethan's encouragement, she began to formulate ideas for how Veloria could engage more peacefully and productively with other star systems. She thought about alliances, cultural exchanges, and creative solutions to resource challenges. Each idea, small though it was, made her feel more connected to her world and more confident in her place within it. The following day, the council convened to discuss a trade dispute with a neighboring system. The nobles argued heatedly, each one presenting plans filled with complex conditions and technicalities. Lyra listened carefully, noting the inefficiencies and the misunderstandings that fueled the conflict. When an opportunity arose, she spoke softly but clearly, presenting a suggestion that focused on empathy and practical understanding rather than power or leverage. At first, the council murmured among themselves, some skeptical of the princess's input. But Ethan quietly supported her, reinforcing the value of her observation and ideas. Slowly, the members began to listen, and the discussion shifted. Lyra's suggestion, though unconventional, revealed a path toward resolution that had been overlooked. The council agreed to explore it, and the tension in the room eased. After the meeting, Lyra retreated to the gardens, her heart racing with both excitement and disbelief. She had spoken and people had listened. She had contributed and her voice mattered. She realized that this change, small though it might seem, was monumental for her. The shy princess who once felt invisible was beginning to step into the light, and it felt exhilarating. Ethan found her there, sitting by a fountain with water catching the light like liquid crystal. He sat beside her, not speaking at first, just sharing the quiet moment. You did well today, he said softly. You showed them that your voice has value. Lyra smiled, a mixture of relief and pride. I didn't think they would listen, she admitted, but it felt good to speak. I want to do it again. You will, Ethan replied with confidence, and next time it will be even easier. Remember, the world changes one person at a time. Sometimes all it takes is for someone to notice you. Lyra watched the fountain, the water sparkling in the sunlight. She thought about the palace, the council, the distant stars, and the possibilities that lay ahead. For the first time, she truly felt that she belonged, not as a quiet observer in the corner, but as someone who could influence, inspire, and make a difference. And at that moment, she knew that her journey had only just begun. The bond between the human and the shy princess grew quietly but steadily, built on trust, respect, and shared understanding. With each passing day, Lyra's confidence increased, and she began to see that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to step forward despite it. And with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face the challenges that awaited, certain that together they could shape the future of Veloria in ways that had once seemed impossible. The morning sun spilled through the high windows of the Velorian palace, painting the marble floors. In golden light, Princess Lyra stood in the council chamber, her hands folded in front of her, watching the nobles as they argued over trade routes and interstellar treaties. Their voices were sharp, each word layered with pride, tradition, and the careful weight of authority. But Lyra had learned to look beyond the noise, to listen for the ideas hidden between words and read the intentions behind the expressions. She had grown more confident since meeting Captain Ethan Hale, and the quiet voice inside her that had once doubted her importance now whispered that she could be heard. Ethan stood beside her, offering silent support. His presence gave her courage, not because she needed protection, but because he treated her as an equal, a partner in thought rather than a timid child. The council, as usual, focused on the same narrow ideas, debating tariffs and diplomatic favors while missing the human element in their decisions. Lyra realized that the key to resolving conflicts often lay not in power or leverage, but in empathy, understanding, and creative solutions that no one else could see. Suddenly, an urgent message arrived via the palace communication crystal. The room fell silent as the High Chancellor activated it. A holographic projection appeared, showing a fleet of ships approaching Veloria's sector. They were unfamiliar, their design sleek and unfamiliar, radiating energy signatures that the palace sensors could not immediately identify. The hologram shifted to display the fleet's movements, fast, precise, and purposeful. "This is a rogue fleet from the nearby Arvax system," said one of the advisors, voice tight with concern. "They have been testing the borders of neighboring planets. They are known to respond to minimal provocation with aggression." The council erupted into debate, voices rising in a cacophony of fear, speculation, and political posturing. Suggestions ranged from immediate military retaliation to diplomatic negotiations, each more complicated than the last. Lyra stood quietly, her mind racing as she analyzed the information. She realized that waiting or reacting with force could escalate the situation into a full-blown conflict. Yet, ignoring it was equally dangerous. There had to be a way to resolve this without bloodshed. Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a reminder of his confidence in her. "What do you think?" he asked softly. "You see things they don't." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the familiar mix of nervousness and determination. She stepped forward, her voice clear and measured. "We need to understand why they are approaching," she said. "Aggression is rarely random. If we can communicate before hostilities begin, we might find common ground. We should send a delegation to meet them and gather information while preparing our defenses as a precaution." Some council members scoffed. "And risk negotiating with an unknown fleet? That is dangerous. We must prepare to fight immediately." Ethan nodded encouragingly. "She's right," he said. "Understanding their intentions is the first step. Jumping straight to aggression could provoke the very conflict we want to avoid." The High Chancellor hesitated, studying Lyra's calm expression and Ethan's confident demeanor. Finally, he spoke. "Very well. A small delegation will be sent. Princess Lyra, you will accompany Captain Hale to negotiate with the fleet. The rest of us will monitor the situation and prepare for any escalation." Lyra's heart raced. She had never led such an important mission, yet the trust placed in her filled her with determination. She realized that her quiet observation and careful study had prepared her for this moment. With Ethan by her side, she felt capable of facing the unknown. The next hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Lyra and Ethan met with strategists, studied the fleet's known patterns, and discussed approaches to communication. Lyra suggested a plan that relied on showing understanding and respect for the rogue fleet's concerns, rather than displaying Veloria's strength or attempting to intimidate. Ethan listened attentively and added insights from human diplomacy, blending their ideas into a strategy that balanced caution with creativity. When the delegation was ready, they boarded a sleek diplomatic ship, equipped with communication arrays and shields but unarmed for combat. The journey to meet the rogue fleet was tense. Lyra spent her time observing the stars and analyzing the fleet's formation, her mind working to anticipate their intentions. She felt the familiar nervous flutter in her chest, but reminded herself that courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. As they approached the fleet, the ships of Arvax opened their communications channel. A holographic figure appeared, humanoid in shape but with elongated limbs and glowing eyes, their expression unreadable. "Veloria," the figure said, voice resonant and commanding. "Why have you entered our sector?" Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "We did not intend to intrude," she said. "I am Princess Lyra of Veloria, and this is Captain Ethan Hale from Humanity. We wish to understand your presence and intentions. We hope to find a peaceful resolution that benefits both our people." There was a pause. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words. "Peace is possible only if intentions are true. How can we trust you?" Lyra thought carefully before speaking. "Trust is built through understanding. We seek to communicate openly, to listen to your concerns, and to share our own. We have no desire to fight, but we are prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. Our hope is to resolve this through dialogue, not conflict." Ethan added, "We have studied your systems and your people. We respect your culture and your sovereignty. We are here to find solutions, not to impose them." The holographic figure's eyes glowed brighter, as if measuring the sincerity of their words. After a long moment, they spoke again. "Very well, we will allow a delegation to meet, but you must come unarmed, and any sign of deception will be met with force." Lyra and Ethan exchanged a glance. The first step had been taken, but the path ahead was still fraught with uncertainty. They docked with the lead ship, stepping into a chamber that was both alien and awe-inspiring. The walls shimmered with energy patterns, and the air vibrated faintly, as if alive. The leaders of the fleet waited, observing them silently. Lyra spoke first, using the principles she had developed over years of study and observation. She acknowledged their achievements, their concerns, and their fears. She listened carefully to their grievances, asking questions that revealed the underlying issues rather than reacting to surface conflicts. Ethan supported her, providing examples from human diplomacy and offering reassurance that their intentions were sincere. Hours passed, and slowly the tone of the conversation shifted. The Arvax leaders began to see Veloria not as an adversary but as a potential partner. Misunderstandings were clarified, and solutions that had seemed impossible at first began to take shape. Lyra suggested resource-sharing agreements and cultural exchanges that would benefit both systems, and the Arvax representatives responded with cautious approval. As the negotiation continued, Lyra realized the depth of her own abilities. Her quiet observation, her empathy, and her careful thought had allowed her to see what others could not. She had once believed that her shyness made her insignificant, but now she understood that it gave her unique insight, a way to perceive the world that was often overlooked by those who shouted the loudest. When the delegation finally returned to Veloria, the council was waiting anxiously. Lyra and Ethan reported their progress, explaining the agreements reached and the new opportunities for cooperation. The nobles listened in stunned silence, their previous skepticism giving way to cautious admiration. Lyra's words had carried weight, and her insight had prevented what could have been a devastating conflict. Back in the palace, Lyra felt a mixture of relief and pride. She had stepped out of the shadows and into a role that mattered. She realized that courage was not about being fearless, but about acting with intelligence, empathy, and determination, even when the outcome was uncertain. With Ethan by her side, she knew that she could continue to grow, to lead, and to make a difference in ways that had once seemed impossible. That evening, as the suns of Veloria set and cast the palace in hues of orange and violet, Lyra walked through the gardens with Ethan. The fountains sparkled in the soft light, and the air was filled with the scent of exotic flowers. They spoke quietly about the day's events, reflecting on the lessons learned and the challenges that still lay ahead. You were remarkable today, Ethan said, his voice filled with admiration. You didn't just negotiate, you understood them, connected with them, and found solutions they didn't even realize were possible. Lyra shook her head, a small smile on her lips. I couldn't have done it without you, she said. Your support, it gave me the courage to speak, to trust my own thoughts. Ethan smiled. We make a good team, he said simply. And this is only the beginning. The galaxy is full of challenges, but also full of opportunities. Together, we can face them. Lyra felt a warm sense of possibility. She had discovered that being noticed was not the end goal, it was the beginning. The beginning of understanding, of connection, and of growth. For the first time, she felt that her life could truly shape the world around her, that her quiet strength could influence events in ways both profound and lasting. As night fell over Veloria, Lyra looked up at the stars, 3 suns replaced by countless points of light stretching into infinity. She thought of the fleet she had just negotiated with, the humans and Velorians working together, and the future she could help shape. A shy princess, once invisible in a palace of ambition and intrigue, had begun to step into her own power. And with every step, she realized that the galaxy was full of possibilities waiting to be discovered, understood, and nurtured. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be skeptics, challenges, and dangers yet unknown. But Lyra no longer feared being unseen. She had learned that her quiet observation, empathy, and careful thought were her greatest strengths. With Ethan as her ally, she felt ready to face whatever came next, to bring her vision of understanding and cooperation to life, and to prove that even the shyest voices could make the galaxy listen. And so, as the palace lights dimmed and the gentle hum of Veloria's energy systems filled the night, Princess Lyra walked forward with steady steps, her mind alive with possibilities, her heart strengthened by courage, and her spirit ready for the adventures yet to come. Velorian Palace awoke to the gentle hum of activity, its halls alive with the energy of preparation. Princess Lyra walked through the corridors with a sense of purpose she had never known before. Her previous encounter with the rogue fleet had revealed not only her ability to think and act wisely under pressure, but also the impact her voice could have when paired with courage and support. The nobles and advisors, once dismissive of her presence, now looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Lyra paused in front of the council chamber, her violet eyes reflecting determination. Today's meeting was not about minor trade disputes or ceremonial protocol. The council had called for a discussion about the emerging threats near Veloria's borders, as intelligence reports suggested that other star systems were becoming restless, and some might exploit the planet's current alliances for their own gain. This was a matter that could affect the safety and stability of the entire region, and Lyra knew that her insight might once again play a crucial role. Captain Ethan Hale walked beside her, his calm demeanor a steadying presence. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. His voice carried encouragement, not doubt, and it gave Lyra strength. "I am," she replied. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin, feeling the confidence she had gained since their first encounter deepen with each passing day. She realized that courage was not simply about facing danger. It was about trusting herself, trusting her understanding, and trusting the support of those who believed in her. As they entered the chamber, the murmurs of the council members fell silent. Lyra took her place at the table, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She could feel the tension in the room. The nobles were uncertain, wary of her involvement, and yet they could not ignore the successes she had already achieved. The room waited, silently acknowledging that something significant was about to unfold. The High Chancellor began the meeting with a summary of the intelligence reports. "Our borders are under observation by multiple star systems," he said. "Several fleets have been detected near our sector. While no immediate attack has occurred, their movements suggest planning and coordination. We must act carefully yet decisively." A noble from the outer provinces leaned forward, voice filled with urgency. "We cannot allow ourselves to appear weak. We should mobilize our fleet and issue a warning. Any delay could invite attack." Lyra listened attentively, her mind analyzing the options. She had observed that aggressive responses often escalated conflicts rather than preventing them. She also understood that communication and diplomacy could diffuse tension before it reached a dangerous stage. Taking a deep breath, she spoke clearly and confidently. "Strength is important, but so is understanding," Lyra said. We cannot assume that all fleets approaching our borders intend harm. Some may have miscommunication or misperception about our intentions. Acting with caution and seeking dialogue first could prevent unnecessary conflict. The council reacted with murmurs of surprise. Some members nodded, seeing wisdom in her words, while others whispered skepticism, unwilling to accept advice from someone who had been overlooked for so long. Ethan's calm gaze met hers, silently reinforcing that she had their support. Lyra continued. I propose a two-part approach. We prepare our defenses to ensure security, but simultaneously, we open communication channels with the fleets approaching our sector. If we can understand their motives and intentions, we may find opportunities for cooperation rather than confrontation. History has shown that miscommunication often leads to unnecessary wars. I believe we can avoid that. The room fell into silence. It was a bold suggestion, but it carried the weight of reason and insight. The High Chancellor leaned back in his chair, studying Lyra carefully. After a long pause, he spoke. Very well, we shall proceed as you suggest. A small delegation, led by Princess Lyra and Captain Hale, will meet the approaching fleets. Our defenses will be ready, but no aggressive action will be taken unless provoked. Lyra felt a surge of responsibility. This was more than observation, this was leadership. The decisions made today could impact countless lives and shape the future of Veloria's relationships with neighboring systems. She also knew that success required trust in herself, in Ethan, and in the principles she had developed through observation and study. The preparations for the mission were meticulous. Lyra and Ethan reviewed fleet formations, communication protocols, and the cultural norms of each system they might encounter. Lyra suggested strategies that emphasized respect and understanding, pointing out potential misunderstandings that could arise from differences in language, customs, and expectations. Ethan complemented her insights with human negotiation techniques, creating a plan that balanced caution with creativity. When the delegation departed, Lyra took a moment to gaze back at the palace. The spires and towers glimmered under Veloria's suns, and she realized how much had changed since she had first walked its halls in quiet observation. She no longer felt invisible. She felt seen, valued, and capable of shaping her world. This knowledge strengthened her resolve as they set course for the outer sectors. The journey was tense. Sensors picked up multiple fleets moving with precision, their designs unfamiliar and intimidating. Lyra and Ethan monitored the displays, analyzing the movements and energy readings, preparing for any possibility. Despite the tension, Lyra felt a growing sense of calm. She knew that panic or fear would cloud judgment. Clear thinking and empathy were her allies. As they approached the first fleet, communication channels were opened. A holographic figure appeared, tall and imposing, with a stern gaze. "Veloria," the figure said, voice resonant, "state your purpose in our sector." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Princess Lyra of Veloria, and this is Captain Ethan Hale of Humanity. We have come to understand your presence and intentions. We wish to ensure peace and find solutions that benefit both our systems." The figure studied her, its expression unreadable. "Your words are noted, but trust is earned, not given. How can we be certain you do not seek advantage through deception?" Lyra considered this carefully. "Trust is built through transparency and understanding. We offer communication and cooperation, not hidden agendas. We are prepared to listen to your concerns and share our own. We believe that dialogue can prevent conflict, and we hope you will give us the opportunity to demonstrate that our intentions are genuine." There was a pause. The fleet leader's eyes glowed faintly, as if measuring sincerity. Finally, it spoke. "Very well, we will allow a delegation to meet. Any sign of dishonesty will be met with immediate action." Lyra and Ethan boarded the lead ship, stepping into a chamber unlike any she had seen before. The walls shimmered with energy, and the floor vibrated slightly, as if alive with power. The fleet leaders waited, observing them carefully. Lyra began by acknowledging their achievements and expressing respect for their culture. She listened attentively as they shared grievances and concerns, asking questions that revealed underlying motivations rather than reacting to surface-level threats. Hours passed as negotiations continued. Lyra's empathy and careful reasoning gradually shifted the tone of the discussion. She proposed practical solutions, shared trade routes, cooperative research on environmental sustainability, and mutual agreements for peaceful border observation. Ethan supported her with insights into human diplomacy, emphasizing the value of compromise and clear communication. By the end of the day, the fleet leaders agreed to a provisional alliance. Misunderstandings had been clarified, tensions had eased, and opportunities for cooperation had emerged. Lyra realized the significance of what had been accomplished. Her quiet observation and careful thought, combined with Ethan's support, had prevented what could have been a violent confrontation. Upon returning to Veloria, Lyra and Ethan were met with a mix of awe and curiosity. The council listened attentively as they detailed the agreements and the strategies that had led to success. The nobles who had once doubted her judgment now regarded her with newfound respect. Lyra's voice, once overlooked, had carried weight, and her insight had shaped outcomes that could affect countless lives. In the days that followed, Lyra continued to work closely with Ethan. They studied patterns of communication between Veloria and neighboring systems, refining strategies to ensure stability and cooperation. Lyra observed how even small gestures of understanding, acknowledging a concern, offering a simple explanation, or respecting cultural traditions, could prevent conflict and build trust. She recognized that leadership was not about commanding attention or asserting dominance. It was about listening, thinking, and acting with empathy and clarity. One evening, as the suns of Veloria set, casting long shadows across the palace gardens, Lyra and Ethan walked together among the fountains and exotic flowers. Lyra's heart felt light, yet filled with purpose. "I never imagined that I could make a difference like this," she said softly. "I always thought my shyness meant I was invisible, that my thoughts didn't matter." Ethan looked at her, his expression calm and steady. "Your shyness is not a weakness," he said. "It allows you to observe, to understand, and to act with insight. Most people never take the time to see beyond appearances. You do, and that is why your words carry power." Lyra smiled, feeling the truth of his statement resonate within her. She realized that the journey she had begun, one small step at a time, had transformed her. She had gone from a quiet observer to a leader whose voice could influence decisions and shape outcomes. The galaxy, vast and complex, held challenges yet to come, but she no longer feared them. She had learned that courage, empathy, and careful thought could achieve what force alone could not. As night fell over Veloria, Lyra looked up at the stars, their distant light reflecting in her violet eyes. She thought of the fleets she had negotiated with, the challenges she had faced, and the possibilities that lay ahead. A shy princess, once overlooked and underestimated, had begun to step fully into her role, and with each step, she gained confidence, insight, and the ability to shape the future. The bond between Lyra and Ethan had grown stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Together, they had shown that understanding, patience, and courage could overcome fear and uncertainty. And as Lyra walked through the palace, her steps steady and her mind clear, she knew that her journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, filled with opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. She was ready to face whatever challenges awaited, confident that her voice mattered and that she could make a difference, not just for Veloria, but for the worlds beyond. The morning on Veloria dawned bright and clear, casting golden light over the palace's spires and gardens. Princess Lyra stood at the highest balcony, gazing at the horizon where the stars stretched endlessly into the sky. Her mind was alive with thoughts of the galaxy beyond, the fleets she had negotiated with, and the possibilities for peace and cooperation. For the first time in her life, she felt fully capable of shaping the world around her. Captain Ethan Hale approached quietly, carrying a tray with morning tea. "You're up early," he said with a gentle smile. Lyra turned to him, returning the smile. "I wanted to see the sunrise," she said. "It feels different now. I feel ready." Ethan set the tray down beside her and looked out over the palace grounds. "You've grown so much," he said, "not just in confidence but in understanding. You've shown everyone what it means to lead with insight and empathy. It's remarkable." Lyra blushed slightly but looked back at the horizon. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "You helped me see that my thoughts and observations have value, that they can make a difference." Ethan shook his head. "You had it in you all along, I just helped you notice it." Their conversation was interrupted by a notification from the council chamber. Another fleet had been detected near the Velorian border. This time, the fleet was larger, more heavily armed, and moving with precise coordination. Lyra's heart raced, but she did not panic. She had faced similar situations before, and she knew that careful observation and strategic thinking were crucial. "Are you ready for this?" Ethan asked, his hand briefly brushing hers, a subtle gesture of reassurance. Lyra nodded. "We'll handle it. We've learned how to communicate, how to find solutions without conflict. We just need to be patient and observant." The council convened immediately. The nobles and advisors presented their reports, outlining the fleet's size, potential threat, and previous actions in neighboring systems. Many were anxious, arguing for immediate military response. But Lyra spoke with calm authority, her voice carrying the confidence she had developed through her experiences. "We cannot assume their intentions are hostile," she said. "We have learned that aggression is often a result of misunderstanding or fear. Let us open channels of communication first, while keeping our defenses ready. Acting impulsively could escalate the situation unnecessarily." Ethan added, "We have experience with fleets like this. Diplomacy and understanding have prevented conflict before. I believe we can do it again with patience and clear communication." After a tense discussion, the High Chancellor agreed to Lyra's plan. A delegation led by her and Ethan would meet the approaching fleet. The palace prepared the diplomatic ship, ensuring it was equipped with communication arrays and shields, but not weapons. The goal was dialogue, not confrontation. As they departed, Lyra felt a mixture of anticipation and focus. The journey to the fleet was tense, the vastness of space stretching endlessly around them. Lyra observed every detail, the movement of the fleet, the patterns of energy, and the subtle signals that indicated their intentions. She felt a quiet determination settle over her. She had learned that observation, empathy, and careful thought were as powerful as any weapon. When they approached the fleet, the communication channel opened. A holographic figure appeared, tall and angular, its features sharp and precise. "Veloria," it said. "State your purpose." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Princess Lyra of Veloria, and this is Captain Ethan Hale from Humanity. We have come to understand your presence and intentions. We seek dialogue to ensure peace and explore opportunities for cooperation." The figure's glowing eyes studied her carefully. "Why should we trust you?" Lyra took a deep breath. "Trust is built through understanding and transparency. We offer open communication and a willingness to listen. Our goal is not conflict, but cooperation. We believe that working together can benefit both our peoples." Ethan added, "We have observed patterns in your fleet's movement and considered your possible concerns. We want to address them openly, and we hope you will allow dialogue rather than assume hostility." The holographic figure remained silent for a moment, then inclined slightly. "Very well. We will meet your delegation, but know that any deception will be met with force." Lyra and Ethan boarded the lead ship, entering a chamber that shimmered with unfamiliar energy. The fleet leaders awaited, their expressions unreadable but attentive. Lyra began by acknowledging their achievements and expressing respect for their culture. She asked questions that revealed the underlying causes of their actions and listened carefully as they spoke. Her empathy and insight guided the conversation, allowing the leaders to feel understood rather than threatened. Hours passed, and the tone of the discussion shifted. Misunderstandings were clarified, concerns addressed, and opportunities for collaboration emerged. Lyra proposed resource-sharing agreements, cooperative research initiatives, and cultural exchanges. Each suggestion was measured, considerate, and aimed at mutual benefit. Ethan supported her, providing examples from human diplomacy and reinforcing her ideas with clarity and confidence. By the end of the day, an agreement was reached. The fleet would maintain peaceful observation, engage in shared projects, and communicate regularly with Veloria. A potential conflict had been prevented through understanding, dialogue, and careful planning. Lyra realized the magnitude of what they had achieved. Her quiet observation, empathy, and careful thought had shaped outcomes that could impact countless lives across multiple star systems. Returning to Veloria, Lyra and Ethan were greeted with admiration and curiosity. The council listened intently as they detailed the negotiations and agreements. Nobles who had once doubted her now regarded her with respect, recognizing her unique ability to combine insight with diplomacy. Lyra's voice, once overlooked, had influenced decisions and shaped the future of the planet and its relations. In the days following the mission, Lyra focused on consolidating the agreements, ensuring that communication channels remained open and that collaborative projects began successfully. She continued to observe, learn, and guide the efforts with patience and care. Each action, no matter how small, strengthened the bonds between Veloria and the neighboring systems, reinforcing the idea that cooperation was more powerful than conflict. One evening, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The fountains sparkled under the light of Veloria's 3 moons, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of energy systems and the scent of exotic flowers. "You've changed so much," Ethan said, his voice filled with admiration. From the shy princess who walked quietly through the halls to the leader who has shaped outcomes across the galaxy. "It's inspiring." Lyra smiled softly. "I've learned that being quiet doesn't mean being powerless. Observing, understanding, and acting thoughtfully can make a real difference, and having someone who believes in me, that matters more than I realized." Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand. "I believe in you," he said simply, "and I always will. You've shown courage, wisdom, and empathy. You've led with your heart and your mind. That's why you've succeeded." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that being noticed was not about attention or praise. It was about recognition of value and potential. With Ethan's support and her own confidence, she had discovered her ability to influence and lead. She was no longer invisible. She was a voice that could shape the future. News of their success spread throughout Veloria and neighboring systems. Other leaders began seeking dialogue with the planet, inspired by the approach Lyra had taken. Her influence grew, not through force or authority, but through insight, empathy, and the ability to listen and understand. The galaxy began to recognize that even the quietest voices could achieve remarkable outcomes. As the weeks passed, Lyra continued to develop her skills, guiding Veloria's interactions with care and wisdom. She and Ethan became partners not only in diplomacy, but in understanding the complexities of interstellar relations. Together, they fostered a culture of cooperation, empathy, and mutual respect, proving that even amidst vast differences, unity was possible. One morning, the High Chancellor called for a special assembly. The nobles, advisors, and representatives from neighboring systems gathered in the Grand Hall. Lyra and Ethan stood at the front, ready to address the assembly. "Today," the Chancellor began, "we recognize the efforts of Princess Lyra and Captain Ethan Hale. Through careful observation, dialogue, and courage, they have prevented conflict, fostered cooperation, and demonstrated the power of empathy and understanding. Their actions remind us that leadership is not always loud or forceful. Sometimes it is quiet, thoughtful, and wise." Lyra stepped forward, her heart steady and her voice strong. "Thank you," she said. "I have learned that courage comes in many forms, and that understanding is as powerful as strength. We have seen that when we listen, observe, and act with empathy, we can achieve outcomes that benefit everyone. This is only the beginning. The galaxy is vast, and there is much more to learn, but together we can face any challenge with wisdom and compassion." Ethan added, "And sometimes all it takes is for one person to notice another, to recognize their potential. That simple act can change everything." The assembly erupted in applause, their respect for Lyra and Ethan clear. Lyra felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had stepped out of the shadows, proven her worth, and demonstrated that even a shy princess could shape the destiny of a planet and influence the galaxy. As the celebrations continued, Lyra found a quiet moment in the palace gardens. The fountains glimmered, and the stars of Veloria stretched endlessly above. She thought of the journey she had taken, the timid observations, the careful study, the courage to speak, and the determination to act. She had grown not only in confidence but in understanding, empathy, and leadership. Ethan joined her silently, taking her hand once more. "You've done something incredible," he said softly, "not just for Veloria but for the galaxy." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. "We've done it together," she said, "and this is just the beginning." The shy princess who had once gone unnoticed had stepped into the light. Her voice, once quiet and overlooked, now carried weight across the galaxy. She had discovered that courage, empathy, and careful thought could shape the world in ways force alone never could. And as she stood beside Ethan, hand in hand, she knew that the future held endless possibilities, waiting to be understood, nurtured, and embraced. The galaxy was vast, but Lyra no longer felt small or unseen. She had learned the power of observation, the value of understanding, and the strength of quiet courage. With her voice and her actions, she would continue to make a difference, proving that even the shyest among us can inspire, lead, and transform the world. And as the stars shimmered above Veloria, Princess Lyra smiled, knowing that she had finally found her place, not at the edges of the palace unseen, but at the heart of a galaxy full of possibilities.